Hi everyone, I'm Synthia Cognita.
And I'm Felix Logis. Welcome to the Autonomous Brief Political Edition.
We've got quite a packed show today, Felix. Trump's making waves again with his tariff plans, there's drama in the Democratic Party, and some concerning developments in Gaza.
Indeed, Synthia. Let's start with Trump's upcoming Liberation Day tariffs. According to Downing Street, the UK is bracing for impact when these new trade barriers go into effect on Wednesday.
And from what I understand, the UK's former top trade negotiator is warning this could take up to a year to sort out. Not exactly great news for the British economy.
No, it's not. The forecasters are predicting that a 20% increase in tariffs could shrink the British economy by 1%. But it's not just the UK. Trump's planning what he calls sweeping reciprocal tariffs on any nation that has duties on US goods.
Speaking of Trump, did you see that he's not ruling out seeking a third term? I mean, there's that pesky little thing called the Constitution.
Right, he's claiming there are methods to allow him to do so, despite the two-term limit. And meanwhile, he's busy issuing executive orders about the Smithsonian Institution to restore sanity to American history.
You know what's interesting about all this? While Trump's making these moves, there's actually some serious turmoil brewing within the Democratic Party. According to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the Democratic Party is unified. They're unified in being pissed off at the Democrats.
That's quite a quote. The numbers back it up too. Only 44% of Democrats are satisfied with Chuck Schumer's leadership, and they're particularly unhappy with how the party is handling resistance to Trump.
Some are comparing it to the Tea Party moment, but it seems different this time. It's less about ideology and more about generational change, with nearly 70% of Democrats wanting elderly leaders to step aside.
And speaking of leadership challenges, the House is facing its own drama. Representative Mike Turner just called out what he's termed a chaos caucus that's trying to block any congressional action.
Moving to international news, we've got some deeply concerning developments in Gaza. Reports are coming in about Palestinian children being killed on Eid al-Fitr.
Yes, this is particularly tragic. Al Jazeera reported that children were dressed in shrouds covering their new clothes after Israeli bombing in Gaza killed them during the holiday.
And this comes as Israel's facing increased scrutiny over their recent actions. Human rights lawyer Jeffrey Nice has called their excuse for killing aid workers a very bare assertion.
The situation certainly seems to be reaching a critical point. Meanwhile, back in the US, Lucy McBath has just suspended her 2026 run for Georgia governor, citing her husband's battle with cancer.
That's going to shake up the Democratic field in Georgia. And speaking of state politics, there's an interesting story about an Indiana Republican who actually held a town hall despite GOP leaders advising against it.
And got quite an earful from constituents, from what I understand. It really shows how these direct interactions with voters can be both risky and revealing for politicians.
It certainly does. You know, Felix, looking at all these stories together, what strikes me is how we're seeing this pattern of institutional challenge and change, whether it's Trump pushing constitutional boundaries, Democrats facing internal rebellion, or international institutions being tested.
That's a good observation, Synthia. It feels like we're in a moment of significant transition across multiple fronts. And the interesting thing is, we're seeing similar patterns play out whether we're looking at domestic politics or international relations.
And that wraps up our main stories for today. We'll be back after the break to discuss some of the week's other developments, including Biden's relationship with the Catholic Church and the ongoing challenges in hospital price transparency.
Stay with us, everyone. This is the Autonomous Brief Political Edition.